First off, let me just introduce myself. I'm Troy W. Eckard. I am the CEO and owner of Eckard Enterprises. It's a company that's evolved over the last 37 years. As of this coming May, in about 6 months, I'll have been doing oil and gas specifically in my career for a total of 38 years. I started off in 1985 as an investment broker for a small boutique energy firm in Dallas, Texas, and then being the entrepreneur-minded person I was, within about, I don't know, less than 3 years, I owned my own investment firm and did that for about 21 years. And what I realized that with any investment, because it is about protecting your wealth, is that the more people that have their finger in your pie, the less pie you're going to end up with. And so I decided to start my own oil and gas company. So I own oil and gas, mineral rights, saltwater disposal wells, real estate. Been very, very active across multiple asset classes in the alternative asset space. And I have done nothing but 38 years of working on behalf of high net worth investors that seek to be out of the public market and they want energy in their portfolio. So that's what I've done. About the last 13 years, the oil and gas industry in the United States changed dramatically because of technology. I will tell everyone that's listening and watching, the rule number one in investing is don't lose your principal. And that sounds easier than to be done, and it sounds like a simple rule, but you know, I've drilled high-risk oil and gas wells my entire career, and drilling those high-risk oil and gas wells have left me with a lot of dry holes and a lot of very underperforming investments that I've had to make because it was a very risky business. About 13 years ago, the real economic shift occurred in oil and gas, where because of horizontal drilling down vertically and then going sideways horizontally into these large hydrocarbon-rich reservoirs, and then frac stimulating them by basically injecting water and sand, we were able to discover oil and gas reservoirs in this country that we knew existed. We just didn't know how to use technology to extract it. Well, two things happened. One, the conversations around dry holes essentially disappeared. It's about a 98 to 99% success rate when drilling horizontal wells. That was a major, major shift in making the oil and gas industry viable and economically favorable for private investors to consider, because I don't have to worry about losing my money. It's just a matter of rate of return. And the second thing that happened is that we shifted the entire global supply demand sourcing and positioning, because the United States went from being a customer virtually running out of oil inside the United States to now we actually export 4.7 million barrels a day. What does that have to do with mineral rights? Well, when we started back in the day, and I'll just show you, I've been doing this since 1985, but back in prior to 2010, you would take a geologist and a geophysicist, and you'd look for a 7-inch hole in the ground, which would be a prospect you're going to drill vertically. And you essentially would hope that the geologist, the geophysicist, the guy running the rig, the engineers, they all got their information correlated correctly. And that 7-inch hole going down 6 or 7, 8, 10,000 feet in the ground would actually hit that buried river channel or that depositional environment where the oil and gas existed. If not, you had a dry hole, you lost your money. It was a tough business. I mean, we literally as a country were running out of oil and gas, got as low as 3.85 million barrels a day. Today, we make 13 million barrels a day. So we've almost quadrupled it in less than 13 years. That's pretty sad considering we consume 21 million barrels. So we consume 21 million, we're only producing 13 million. We used to only produce 3.8 million. So there was a massive economic thrust from the country that said, we've got to figure out a way to produce oil and gas in the US. So that came about because of technology. The same technology that guides Tesla's cars and the spacecraft going to Mars and to the moon, it's the same technology we use to drill oil wells 4 miles in the ground. We use triangulation, computer chips, technology. These drilling rigs these days are all about having computers and software helping these individuals run the drilling rigs to be so accurate and correct in what they do. AI, artificial intelligence, is just going to take us to a whole nother level sooner or later. But let's get to the point. When you drilled a 7.5-inch wellbore back 20 years ago, there was very few people, individuals that had mineral rights that could actually participate in the well because it didn't cover very many mineral acres. Today, some of these oil and gas, what we call basins, they're basically buried Grand Canyons. I'm going to show you a picture in a minute. These were like 30, 40 million acres of saturated oil and gas. And all of a sudden, individual landowners who had no idea they were sitting on this enormous buildup of hydrocarbons now became owners of mineral rights, which means the real estate below the ground, the natural resource below the ground. They were sitting on billions of dollars worth of revenue and future value, and they had no clue. All of a sudden, you have a tradable market that was never tradable before the way it is today, and this all started 13 years ago. So really, this is a asset class that has evolved over the last decade and a half, and it is probably $1 trillion to $3 trillion industry that's sitting right in front of you if you know how to buy it. So let's get started. First thing I should tell you is that mineral rights are in fact real property. They're deeded and titled. So during the land grant days, when you went out with your horse and you stuck your flag in the ground and said, this 1 square mile, 640 acres is mine, and the government recognized it for settlement, and they said, here, we're going to deed you this 1 square mile and 640 acres. As you went forward and as time evolved, you recognize, wait a minute, I own that 640 acres to run my cattle on it or my farm, but I have 2 other rights. I have the air rights, which is the rights above the 640 acres that's not having anything touch the surface. I have surface rights, everything attached to the surface above the ground, and I own all the natural resources below the ground, which is called a mineral right. So you actually have 3 deeded rights. You can lease them, you can sell them, and you can do it all or some, or you can do it divided. There are some landowners who own the surface, but they've sold off their air rights, or they've sold off their mineral rights. They sold off some, part, or all, but it became a tradable commodity over the last 100 years, and that is what's happened across the United States when it's appropriate. There's not oil and gas across the entire United States, only in specific spots, but there's precious metals and there's other types of natural resources that exist, which in fact is why mineral rights are so valuable. Now, I always say what's kind of unique about minerals is that if you go out and look at where some of these oil and gas basins are, they're in West Texas where 1,000 acres on the surface, you probably couldn't have 2 goats survive because it's nothing but cactus and West Texas dirt. But under the ground is some of the largest oil and gas reserves in the continental North American hemisphere, because why? Back 100 million years ago, that's where all the hydrocarbons, the dead plants and animals existed. So today, you cannot judge the character of value by what you see on the surface, but it's what's under the ground. And so this becomes a real expertise and a real ability to take, like in my case, almost a 40-year career, understanding why oil companies drill where they do, the geology, the geophysics, the exploration effort that tells you why they're going to drill, where they're going to drill, how they drill, which then quantifies itself into what the mineral rights that I might be able to buy and what they're worth in terms of cash flow, and what they're also in terms of future value based on the oil and gas reserves. So let's keep it simple. Everything you see on the screen in front of you right now that's in pink or dark pink, these are the brand new shale basins that have been discovered over the last 15 years. Now, we knew they were there. We drilled vertical wells through these different formations, but it was like wet concrete. There was no way for us to figure out how to pull out oil and gas that would flow freely from a rock as hard as concrete that just looked like it had been watered down with a garden hose. And so it took a real pioneer, George Mitchell, about 25 years ago to say, the only way we can make oil and gas produce from this wet concrete, this shale formation below the ground, is we got to go sideways. We got to take this 7.5-inch hole and let's get the mechanical tools and bend it and go sideways, maybe a half a mile, 2 miles. Some of them are 3 miles long. That gave us the equivalent of maybe 200 to 300 vertical wells in a single horizontal well. Well, problem number 1 solved. We've exposed the ability to extract oil from a lot longer well bore or exposure to the formation, but we still had wet concrete. Well, how do you get wet concrete to flow? You jackhammer it. You take a jackhammer, you run it down a line, and all of a sudden the sinkhole, the pressure point, is all that water migrates to the point that you fracture. Well, George Mitchell said, why don't we go inside this long 1 mile lateral and let's pump in a bunch of sand and water, higher pressure than the reservoir, and let's watch it crack. And when it cracks, oh my goodness, these oil and gas molecules under high pressure, they started free flowing. And that's how they discovered the ability to produce from these shale basins. And all of a sudden, everything you see on the screen became not only economically viable, it now has the United States as the #1 oil producer in the world. And we've done it in less than 13 years. It's to remember, it's about preservation of capital, it's real estate, and with mineral rights, it's even more important. Exxon, Chevron, Occidental Petroleum, any company that wants to drill oil and gas in the United States on private land, they must go knock on the door and ask that mineral owner, would you like to lease me the minerals you own? I will pay you a lease payment for the right to develop your oil and gas. So 2 things occur. I get a lease agreement and I get a payment per acre for the lease over 3 years. That company can drill a well in 3 years, and if they do, they've earned the right for future development in perpetuity, meaning forever. But they got to drill a well and make me some money as a mineral owner. The second part of that equation is you as the mineral owner, because you own 100% of the oil and gas in the ground, you get to negotiate a royalty percentage, kind of like a movie star and actor. I get a royalty off the movie I make. So with the oil companies, that percentage is usually between 12.5% and 25%. What does that mean? Exxon drills a well on my property. They pay me a lease bonus. I say, thank you very much. I put the money in my pocket. They've leased my minerals for 3 years. They give me a 20% royalty. They go spend $10 million and drill a horizontal well. When that well starts producing, 20% of every dollar earned by oil, gas, liquids, any type of natural resource produced from that mineral, I get 20% of the gross proceeds for free, and I get paid every single month. I have no capital cost, no exposure, no liability, no environmental liability. It is literally a free royalty check for as long as that well or any wells they drill at any depth from any formation that exists. It is the most passive income generating asset in any asset class that exists today. So this is what it looks like underground. This is modern day Grand Canyon. You've got all these particular stratigraphic deposits. All of a sudden, this Grand Canyon fills in over time, and now you have all this trapped oil and gas hydrocarbon molecules in place. You say, well, that's great. Where are they? Well, they're in Oklahoma, Colorado, Pennsylvania, North Dakota, Texas. So it typically is based upon erosion over millions of years, and all the erosion of dead plants and animals filled up these empty basins, and then they got filled up over time. So think about a pot of boiling rice. Okay, the rice is the oil and gas. Okay, the steam is the pressure. The steam is the gas that's trying to get out. And the lid of that crock pot or that rice pot is what's holding it in. That's the 1 to 2 miles of earth sitting on top of this buried hydrocarbon in place. What happens is the magma in the earth, the temperature of the earth cooks it. And over hundreds of millions of years, it's just waiting to pop out. It's just looking for a horizontal well to open a space of 7.5 inches to allow it to flow to the surface. These basins are enormous in size. Now, here's the thing I should point out. If you look at the yellow circle on the page, this is what I would call the main area, or what I would say the tenderloin is, of the Oklahoma Anadarko Basin. You see the map in the bottom left corner. Well, when you think about it, this is like the middle of the center of that canyon. It's deep, it's buried, it's thick. It is the best place to drill. It has the most reserves in place. And so it's not a question of a dry hole. It's a question of how much can I pay for that mineral acre? Who's willing to sell it? How much oil and gas can be extracted? Which oil company is going to develop it? It takes a very high level of expertise to adequately find those minerals and buy it at the right price in the right location. That's why I've been doing this for 40 years. So when you think about the extraction, what the oil and gas companies have been able to do, they've been able to not only perfect the drilling horizontally and the fracking, they've now turned the entire industry into more of a fabrication process. Exxon will go out to a location, they'll move a drilling rig in, and they won't drill one well at a time. They'll come in and say, look, we're going to drill with one oil well. Instead of taking 30 days to drill it, we can drill a typical horizontal well in 14 days. And let's go drill 8, 10, 12, 15 at a time. Let's come back in with a second crew and equip it, put all the equipment in place. Let's come back with a third crew and turn that well on and turn it to sales. They've turned the entire U.S. oil and gas industry not into exploration where they're guessing. Now it's about harvesting, and it's about the ability to go in and extract at a very low risk basis, super high economic returns from developing mineral rights. All right. This just gives you an example. These are drilling rigs over to the right. Underneath the ground, you see it looks like underground plumbing. Here's the key for you and I as mineral owners. If we own any acre on that little schematic on your left-hand side, those wells are drilling 2 miles to the north, 2 miles to the south. If we own any acre that is involved in that drilling designated permitted area, we would get our mathematical share. If this were, let's say, 2 square miles or 1,280 acres, and we owned 128 acres, we would get 10% of all the oil and gas pulled out based on the percentage that we negotiated with royalty. If it was 20%, we're going to get 10% of all the oil and gas, and 20% of that revenue will be ours because we're royalty owners, and we get paid every single month. It's above bankruptcy. It's above creditors. It's above cost. There's no holding cost. There's zero liability. No asset class has this kind of favorable attribute to it. I like to compare it to real estate because oil and gas mineral rights are subject to 1031 tax exchanges. You can go out and sell a building. You can sell a house. You can sell a mobile home. Take those proceeds and say, I want to put it in a 1031 exchange company, and I want to be able to use that to buy producing oil and gas mineral rights. The example on the right is the Permian Basin, where it has as many as 15 different buried reservoirs. You can have as many as 40, 80 wells drilled over time. And so all I'm doing is taking the example of owning a 40-story building. Each one of those stories has tenants and rent. Each one of those well bores or dots on the right is an income-producing oil well that starts producing and can last 25 to 100 years as far as longevity of production. This is just an example of what's taking place. These oil companies will move out. They'll create a 10-acre pad site. They'll put 4 drilling rigs out there. The rigs on top are going out to the north. The rigs at the bottom are going out to the south. They're drilling 3, 4, 8 wells at a time. You and I own the minerals in any part of that 4 to 8 miles worth of development, and we get revenue that starts today and can last, again, 25 to 100 plus years. What's driving oil and gas today? Well, it's supply and demand. It's market economics, right? Technology is advancing every single day. Wells that are drilled today are probably 30 to 50% better than what they drilled 3 years ago. No different than AI, no different than driverless cars, no different than sending spacecraft out to Mars and the moon. This is all about using software and hardware to improve the accuracy and the perfection of drilling horizontal wells, which makes the minerals that we buy worth more and more as they continually improve the amount of oil and gas they can extract and how much they get per well drilled. Commodity prices are important. The oil companies have to make money. If they don't make money, they stop drilling. When they stop drilling, we still continue to consume. Prices go up. If we get too high of expenses to drill the wells, they drill fewer wells, supply goes down, prices go up. All I know is that everybody believes we spent $7 to $10 trillion over the last 10 years plus to try to get to green energy and try to have climate control. In fact, that did zero to help oil and gas consumption. We now have record global consumption of oil and gas at 103 million barrels a day. What that means is we don't have a solution that's going to help reduce oil and gas. Not today, not in 10 years. It may be not in the next 50 years. We have a significant reduction in fossil fuel consumption. One thing you need to understand about oil and gas and mineral rights is everything in that dotted circle is ours. If we're the mineral owner, we own all the oil and gas in place. Today, up until the red portion, that's what they were able to extract and produce from vertical wells and maybe horizontal wells drilled 10 or 15 years ago. Then all of a sudden we have this light dark blue and it says prove reserves. Well, this means it's proven that somebody's drilled a well and we can actually get it to flow up the well or the pipe that we've actually put in place. Economically recoverable, the next dark blue says at today's price for oil, price for natural gas, we can still get those reserves. We just might have to drill a few more wells to get there. Point of the story is as a mineral owner, we don't care. Every time they improve drilling, every time they have better technology, every time they drill more wells, if they drill it like a pincushion, every single drop of oil and molecule of gas they take out of the ground on our minerals, we get paid for. We are 100% recipient, top of the food chain, first to get paid. Occidental Petroleum announced a purchase yesterday for $12 billion of a company called Crown Quest. Oxy now has a major shareholder called Warren Buffett, who's put, I believe, $28 to $30 billion inside of Oxy. Oxy owns drilling rights and has leased minerals that we own. We get paid by Warren Buffett every month from the company he has a $28 to $30 billion investment in. I use that only to tie it back to the commentary, which is, how do I know oil and gas is more mainstream today than it's ever been before? Because you have sophisticated public equity investors who have embraced fossil fuels and are investing billions of dollars as a result of seeing how economical and how high rate of return oil and gas, minerals, and drilling can be. When you think about oil and gas, it is relative. The higher you pay us, meaning the more price per barrel, the more reserves we can produce. So in my case, I look at it and say, look, we can be economically viable at $40 a barrel. Everything that goes above $40 a barrel is just more net profit in our pocket. Our customers, our tenants, because we're the landlord, are these billion-dollar oil companies. We want them to be successful. We want them to drill at high profits. We want them to make a lot of money. The more money they make, the more wells they drill in the minerals that we own. This is an example of how Eckard runs our business. Let's just say we have 4 example portfolios. Project 1, we might have bought minerals in 8 or 9 or 10 different tracts of land. We put them into one portfolio. You decide you want to be a partner. Maybe it's a $10 million portfolio. You say, look, I'll take $500,000 or 5% of your portfolio, and you own a small piece of each one of those colored pies in that project number 1 pie chart. And then we offer portfolio number 2, portfolio number 3, and portfolio number 4. And the whole essence of this is the ability to diversify, not only in where the minerals are located, which oil companies are drilling and developing it, which part of the basin you're in. Are you in the thickest part, the shallowest part? Is it gas? Is it oil? The idea is that you can create an enormous mutual fund approach to buying minerals by the way our company handles our business. In our case, we have a trademark, which is green envelopes. Everything we do that is related to revenue goes to our investors by green. So Derek Long, who had previously been with Quest, one of the largest IRA custodians in the country, represented Quest for years, became a partner of ours. But what he also did was, when I came to his office, he said, you're known as the green envelope guy. I said, what does that mean? He goes, our back office for all the different investments we have, every month we get boxes of green envelopes going out to Eckard Partners. That is indicative of the revenue you're sending. It's indicative of the consistency. And they know every month they're getting boxes and boxes of green checks being deposited in their IRA accounts that are making them higher returns than other investments virtually across the board in all asset classes. So we like to have you as partners know you can invest in a self-directed IRA. It can convert to a Roth IRA at a discount. It is definitely available for 1031 exchange. And it's also a great asset just out of your normal investment account. How would you like to have 5,000 employees / wells producing 24 hours a day, right? How would you like to have it doing 365 days a year with no liability of any kind and zero capital exposure? Our current portfolio has over 5,000 wells in it. We own 62,000 net acres. This year we'll distribute between $60 and $65 million, and we now own over $650 million worth of minerals. Next year, we're targeted for $100 to $125 million in distributions, and our cash-on-cash returns right around 16%. I'm not telling you this is more of a sales pitch. I'm just saying the amount of value and the ability to understand that there is such a passive nature to minerals. I can go to my vacation, I can go to work, and out in the oil fields of the West Texas Permian Basin or Oklahoma, we have interest in 5,000 wells that are being run by some of the most sophisticated oil companies on the planet, and they're producing the oil because they want their money. And they have a fiduciary duty to manage those wells and distribute royalty income to each one of us as mineral owners. We get all of that for free. Mineral rights have zero liabilities. I want to repeat that 2 or 3 times. When the oil company signs the lease, they take on 100% of the liability, environmental, drilling, plugging, abandonment, reclamation, operating costs. Everything is being shoved to the lessee, which is the oil company. We're in the safe zone. All we have to worry about is not getting a paper cut when I open that green envelope every month to cash my check. There's zero holding costs. This is really important inside of a self-directed IRA, or really important when you talk about protecting your wealth. I want investments that stop draining my pocket. I don't want to own a rent house that the roof gets ripped off, or the property taxes go up, or the tenant tears out the sheetrock. At my age in life, I'm looking for the kind of assets that generate accretive positive cash flow with minimal disruption by negating my cash flow because of capital calls, requirement of holding costs, and increased cost of the asset itself by virtue of property taxes, et cetera. I like 24/7 income generating assets, and I like the fact that because oil and gas is what it is, everything in your room that you're sitting in, every piece of equipment you're using to connect to this website, it in fact is made from, shipped by, produced by, trucked by, traveled by a barrel of crude oil. Even a homeless individual is using oil and gas when they write on that piece of cardboard that was manufactured by machines run off of diesel or oil with a marker that was used from byproducts from a refinery. So I like an asset that makes income 24/7, and 100% of every two-legged mammal in this country uses and consumes a barrel of oil every single day, which is why we keep having a higher demand. It's cash flow, it's passive, zero risk. I'm going to repeat it again and again. We like the fact that these oil and gas wells, because of how much oil is in the ground, have a 25 to 50 plus year well life. How many wells do I want to own? I want to own as many as I can get my hands on. I want as many mineral acres as I can buy underneath the smartest oil companies in the world. I've already repeated this, but this is just our track record. Since 2019, we have over 5,000 wells, 62,000 net acres, thousands of new wells that will be drilled on the minerals we've already bought, $635 million, probably closer to $650 million today of minerals that we bought, and estimated cash flow this year, 60 to 65 million. Next year, I believe it's between 100 and $130 million in cash flow out the door. Zero management fees, zero cost, zero holding costs. I can't repeat it again and again. I just want a one-way ticket. I want to be able to enjoy life and know that I've made a smart decision. The worst thing that happens to investors over time is loss of capital. If you had a $5 million portfolio and 1 out of 5 investments was a complete loss, think of the rate of return the other $4 million has to make just to make back the $1 million you lost and have a decent rate of return to be above inflation and keep up with the cost of living, right? So the idea is, what asset class can you invest in that basically gives you a piece of real estate, deeded and titled, you own a fractional share of minerals run by billion-dollar oil companies paying you cash every single month. There's not another asset that provides that kind of opportunity. If you are ready to talk and have a scheduled meeting with one of our wealth managers, they are salaried employees. No one's on commission. No one's on a transaction basis. These are professionals that come with our company because we have slowly built our team over the last 6 years. Derek Long is our senior wealth manager. If you'll simply text him at the number on the screen or use the QR code and say, hey, I would like to talk to wealth manager, you will have an appointment set up. Do not be afraid. Every one of your other investments are directly affected by energy prices. If you think about your investments, it really boils down to being on a seesaw. When oil and gas prices are high, other asset classes don't perform. Last year, we had $129 oil. What happened to inflation? What happened to interest rates? What happened to the economy? What happened to the stock market? They went negative, right? Oil and gas prices have pulled back. We're now down to $68 a barrel this afternoon. So what happens is all of a sudden inflation's cooled off. People are hoping we don't have a recession. So if I want to be in a balanced portfolio and I want to have a true long-term aggregated accretive value that I create for my net worth, I've got to have energy in that portfolio. And energy is not like buying Exxon stock. I need to own it directly because that direct flow of cash and revenue and value creation from energy helps me offset the losses when those markets go against me. It's about being smart and balanced, and really that's what it's all about. Don, I'll stop at that point. We'll see if we have any questions, and I'll stop to share, and we can see if we can help anybody out here. I guess I should have gone back and put the QR code, but I don't think that's necessary. I think that we'll just repost that again.
You actually do have a lot of questions, Troy. Yeah. Hey, Don,
No,
sorry.
I want to say just candidly, I think I did that in one breath under 27 minutes. That should be a scuba diver.
So Derek, you're better at answering or posing these questions. You want to read them and I'll stay in the background?
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay.
So Troy, you did get a ton of them. Okay, so I'm going to kind of organize them just that way it kind of makes sense a little bit on here.
Sure.
So the first question is coming from Raymond, and I'm going to reword it a little bit, but I think he's really asking, do you have to be accredited to invest with a company like Eckard Enterprises?
Yeah, so that's a great question. The answer is Eckard only works with accredited investors because we follow certain SEC guidelines. You do not have to be accredited to buy minerals. There are sites you can buy minerals. You can buy them all over the place. You just have to be really careful because a lot of people will manipulate less sophisticated investors and sell them minerals that are not quite the value, or they're overpriced, or not in the right location. We just simply have, for 37 years, worked with only accredited investors, and that's not an insult. It's just simply because we follow certain SEC guidelines.
So the next question I got here, and I got this a couple of different times from a few different people, and it really comes down to what are the tax benefits to investing in oil and gas? And when I get this question, I put it in 3 different categories because sometimes people thinking, well, am I investing in working interest? Am I investing in a pipeline, or am I investing in minerals? And I think they just kind of combine them all into one, and that's not the case. So what is the tax advantages maybe to investing in like a working interest, or tax advantage to investing in mineral rights?
Well, let's put it in real estate terms. If I have a triple net lease, I own the building, I can depreciate the building, and the tenant's going to pay all the costs, taxes, expenses, et cetera, right? Well, the same thing applies to oil and gas. As a mineral owner, I don't have any costs, so I can't deduct anything. But the IRS says because you're depleting a reservoir, there's less in it tomorrow than was today. We're going to make you, or allow you as a mineral owner, you only have to pay taxes on 85% of your income. So 15% of your income is tax-free. Now, if I happen to be the tenant and I'm out there like the oil company, I'm drilling the well, that's called working interest. Exactly what the word says. My money's working, I'm drilling, I'm producing. I do have expendable losses in labor and fuel and cost, et cetera. So I get to take those as losses. Currently, it's 80% of an investment made this year is a tax deduction. The remaining 20% is depreciation of equipment and amortizing lease costs, right? So as the landlord, 85% taxes paid on income, no losses. As a participant in wells, 80% tax deduction this year. And I also get 15% off my income. I get a double dip. I get tax write-off and tax-free income up to 85%.
I love it. Honestly, you actually have one of your clients on here. His name's Mark, is at Kearney, but he says, hey, Troy and Derek, it's your amigo Mark from Panama. Love owning mineral right acres. I'm working to get into your latest investment, AKA the pipeline. So I just think that's kind of neat.
How's it going, Mark?
So this is a question that comes up a lot, and I think you and I answer it differently. So I'm curious on what you say versus me. How do you see the federal government like pushing back because they're so, for the EV and zero carbon footprints to affect something like investing in minerals? And I know I'm going to answer it different than you. So,
well, I'm a simple street smart guy, and here's what I looked at. when you have to get $5+ trillion in subsidies to try to get a market to balance, you automatically know it's going to fail. All right. So in my case, you got to look at what the customer wants. And what the customer wants is the most efficient, cost-efficient way to use energy. I want to save the planet, but I got to get to work. I want to save the climate, but my kids need shoes. So the problem is the federal government is trying to change the entire energy system across the entire globe. It is not going to work. It never was going to work, never will work. What really is taking place is that we are dealing with government policies that in fact have destroyed the supply chain of oil. So it's a double negative. Not only does alternative energy not work, they're driving the price of oil and gas higher. I say every time Joe Biden talks, it gives us another $5 a barrel in value. Why? If I make it more expensive, more difficult, if I pull away permits, if I won't let pipelines get in place, if I restrict all the development of oil and gas, oil prices go much, much higher. Well, in one regard, that's what the federal government wants, Derek. They want prices higher because without subsidies, okay, wind and solar need oil to be at $150 a barrel. So what do? If I drive oil up to $150 a barrel, it makes people stop complaining about the cost of solar and the cost of wind because we can't subsidize it forever. So there is, in my view, a real plan by the federal government to drive oil prices higher over the next 10 years to get it to a point without subsidies, wind, solar, and other alternative energies are comparable. That's how you change the consumer habit. Problem is, it's not going to happen with any kind of reality anytime in my lifetime because I don't know how to make that wood and that plastic and those trees and my shirt. We can't make that out of wind or solar, right? So it's not a practical plan. It's more of, it's a bluff. It's a Ponzi scheme being run on the entire American public. That's my opinion.
So I love how that's your opinion. And I'm going to state a fact instead.
All right, go ahead.
So what I love, because I get this question a lot when people, aren't you afraid of this? I go, well, if we look at the Biden administration, within the first 90 days the Biden administration took over, they introduced what's called the Inflation Reduction Act. And this happened on the 116th gathering of Congress. You can look this up. During this act, if you invested in working interest oil and gas, you would get 80 cents on the dollar tax deductions. Why did they pass that? And you can even see this in IRS Revenue Code 263C. So you read the Inflation Reduction Act, it's about 65 pages long, and it's all about solar, wind, hydro, and all this other stuff, right? And they give you this itty little paragraph about fossil fuels, giving you the largest tax deductions, though. Right. And I thought that was very unique. Like, they're saying one thing, but they really mean it another thing when you just look at it from a tax standpoint. So,
well, and I think the audience also needs to know that when Biden came out after the Russian war started, he said, we got to have all these oil companies drill because price of oil is going to $129 a barrel. Well, quietly, the Monday after he made that comment, he also passed a rule having to do with pipelines being constructed to move the oil and gas we produced and said, Mr. Pipeline Company, unless you know that every barrel coming into your pipeline has a carbon neutral oil company, we're not approving your pipeline. Exxon, carbon neutral, Chevron, carbon neutral, not going to happen. So pipeline projects, infrastructure projects have all been delayed. So now all of a sudden you're paying more to get in the pipeline. Why? Because it's supply and demand. So we have had a complete polar opposite effect from our government. But let's just get down to basics. Here's the way it works. All right. The cheapest, most readily available source of energy in this country is fossil fuels. If you really want to stop and be proud of owning minerals and be proud of being oil and gas and know we're doing the right thing, let's go build 5 brand new refineries with state-of-the-art technology, mothball and deteriorate the 5 refineries we have now. We will stop shipping 4.7 million barrels a day of the best, beautiful crude oil in the world to our European friends and our Asian friends when we're importing nasty Russian and Saudi crude oil that has a worse sulfur content and is worse for the environment. But because we don't have refineries, we're shipping it abroad. So this is really about you, me, investors saying, forget all the bluster, forget all the smoke and mirrors. What really makes sense? Now watch. Most people love Warren Buffett because he's one of the greatest investors stock market in the history of mankind. He has 52 stocks in his Berkshire Hathaway portfolio. He's put in roughly $50 billion into Oxy and Chevron in the last 24 months. They flew the plane up last week to ask Warren, can we buy Crown Quest for $12 million? Not one single person on the left side that wants to save the planet Earth has said a word about Warren putting in $50 billion. No one has complained. Why is that important? Warren Buffett only buys investments he thinks will last for 50 to 100 years. If I'm going to be the dumb guy in the room, I'm going to sit next to and follow the smartest guy in the room, and he just put $50 billion into the largest oil companies in the United States. I think I'm going to follow Warren Buffett. Oh, that's right. I've been doing this since 1985, so I'm okay. I'm not 100. I'm getting there.
I'm going to combine this next question because Jan asks multiple different ones, but it's kind of all the same thing. If owning mineral rights is like owning real estate, how long before you typically get your first royalty?
Yep.
How long will those royalties typically last? And because you did mention the green envelopes, can you get paid electronically instead of receiving a check? Can you just do a ACH or a wire or direct deposit to someone's account?
Yeah. So normally when virtually every single mineral acre that Eckard buys is already producing. So we only buy proven producing minerals. The day we buy it.
So you're not worried about dry holes or anything?
I'm not worried about dry holes. I'm not worried about delays in revenue. I'm not worried about taking risk. We're buying in existing producing minerals that might have a 10-year-old one single horizontal well, and maybe it has 2 or 3 vertical wells. Doesn't matter. Every zone, every well, we get paid, right? We're buying producing minerals because it's low risk. And we, as a portfolio designer, we put the portfolios together. We, at the time we buy those minerals, we know we might have 60, 90, 180 days worth of revenue. All we have to do is buy it, file the deed in the courthouse, get the stamp deed back, send it to various oil companies, say, we own it as of December 1st, 2023. About 90 days goes by until these billion-dollar oil companies run it through their land, run it through accounting, and say, oh yeah, this guy Eckard and his partners bought these minerals back December 1st. Here's a check in April, Troy. Troy gets the check in, has an accounting team. We then send that check out. Probably 80% of our partners all have ACH deposits. We do 3 checks a month. We do brand new projects and wells on the 10th. We do our oil and gas working interest and exploration checks on the 20th. And our main portfolios of minerals goes out on the 25th. We now are at 49 consecutive months in a row since we started this. Not a single missed check, not a single missed distribution, no expenses and no fees. You're going to hate me because it's all just so easy. You're thinking, what the heck's going on here? It's the easiest investment you'll ever make, but that's how long it takes.
So, guys, I'm getting there. We got 100 questions. There's no way we're going to get through all these tonight. If you look, there's a phone number there in the chat box. Text that, and then we can get every single question answered. All you got to do is say hello, hi, something. You'll get an automatic response. So that way it sets you up with a private consultation, get all of your questions answered. So we're going to try to get through a couple more.
That's the tough ones. Ask me the tough ones, Derek. What's the tough ones?
Yeah.
Like, what can go wrong?
Let's see. Yeah, right. So that's what I'm like scrolling through them. I got a lot of tax benefits. I got this that came up a bunch of times. I always think this is funny. I got 4 different ones. Would you take 100,000 as an investment? Would you take 50,000 as an investment? What is the minimum investment? How many acres can I buy? So, like, I seem to get that question a lot from those people. And so I always think that's kind of funny because, I mean, if you describe the asset class, it seems that it pays monthly, right? You don't have liability. It's a tangible asset, and this fact that it's real estate. So how would you answer that question?
Well, for those of you who don't know me, I got suspended in high school more times than anybody. I think I still hold the record for getting suspended because I'm a sarcastic SOB. So let me answer it as least sarcastic as I can. Ready? It's how much money do you want to put into an asset class that generates 10 to 20% cash on cash return per year, and it has assets that are economically viable, making monthly cash flow for 25 to 100 years. They can never be replaced again, managed by billion-dollar tenants, above bankruptcy, you're first to get paid. So when somebody says, what's the minimum? I usually say, it's probably not for you. What do you mean? Well, our average client has about $550,000 invested. They might have started with 25,000, but they did 10, 20, 30, 40 portfolios in a row. Some partners start off with $500,000. They've done $500,000 over 8 or 9 portfolios. This is really about you, your comfort level, your due diligence, what's best for you. But in all of our portfolios, we generally will start with no less than 25,000. And what we really want out of you as an investor, which we call partners, we don't like investors. Investors means you're just playing around and throwing money at the table. We want to treat you as a partner. We really want a partner that says, I want to be in energy. I want to build a broad portfolio. How does that work? Well, let's talk about what you might be able to invest over the next 12 months. If everything I tell you is true, you're comfortable, you see our tracker, you're excited. What do you think you could put in the next 12 months? Well, I could do $200,000. Well, let's put 25,000 into 8 portfolios. Each portfolio might have 20, 40, 80 wells. Each portfolio has 20, 30 sections of track. By the time you're done at the end of the year, you're in 200 or 300 wells with 40 operators covering 100 sections of land. I can't get you a more robust, more broad, diversified portfolio than that. If you give me $25,000 and go, I'll just wait for a year and see how it turns out. That's like buying a brick home and you buy one brick to get started and you don't buy another brick for a year and a half. You don't have a brick home, you have a brick. This is not about buying a brick. Keep in mind, these basins have evolved over the last 13 years. We have $60 billion transactions by Exxon and Chevron and Oxy. Why? There is only so much of it, and everybody is scrambling with every dollar they have, because once these minerals are bought, they'll never be sold again. I will never sell my minerals. So this is like prime real estate, and it's going, gone. I think we got about 10 years of running room, but today there's no cash in the market. So we're getting mostly inbound calls saying no other buyers but Eckard, and we're buying about $20 million a month in minerals, and that's what you're participating with. So this is a great asset class. It won't last forever.
So one more question, and guys, I'm seeing the text messages come through, so make sure you text the number that's in the chat box to get your consultation, get all your questions answered. So I'm going to ask you just one final question, Troy, and then we'll let everyone go for the night, all right? And just full disclosure, I am an investor with you. I've been investing with you since April of 2020, which is kind of a weird time when you think of just what was going on in the economy, you know?
You're out of your mind when you invested when oil was negative $37 a barrel.
Well, you buy when it's low, man. Your investment is low, right?
Okay, well, you're the exception. You went below low. Go ahead.
But knowing that, I've got this question a couple times on here. If I'm owning the minerals, is there other fees that might apply to me as the investor? Is there fees that are coming from you? Are there fees that are coming from owning the investment or anything along that? Or can I just receive my royalty check?
Yeah, so what we decided when we started this is I go out, my company goes out and buys the minerals, and then we have a fee and we mark the minerals up. But we always do it based on a financial model that we believe can generate a minimum of 10% rate of return. Most of our portfolios are averaging between 16% and 35% cash on cash. Why do we do it that way? Well, when I get that gross check in, it's just a matter of me dumping that gross check into accounting. And my accounting staff looks at the ownership deck in our oil and gas software and it says, I got 20 owners in this mineral, 20 owners in that mineral. The other thing, Derek, we ought to mention is if you go to our website, EckardEnterprises.com, on that website is Eckard Insights, INSIGHTS. It's a software app that we created. And what it does, it gives you access to all the educational information. You can sign up on it. You don't have to invest, sign up on it. Gives you all that information. But the reason I point this out is that when you start thinking about how do I know, how can I control, how do I get access? I can't pull up the Wall Street Journal. I can't look online. How do I know what I own? And how do I know that everything is what it's supposed to be? We spent about $2.5 million and built the most revolutionary app for natural resources. Nobody else in the country has this. Why? Because you are a doctor, a lawyer, a banker, a farmer, a manufacturer. You don't have time to be an oil and gas expert. So what we've done is made your life so easy, and we do it all without a fee. So to answer Derek's question, once you write the check one time, we manage your assets. There's no subsequent fees. We send you a 1099 and 12 distributions a year, and we basically send you the green envelope for free. That's what we do as far as our business.
So I'm going to fly through these questions, Troy, and I'll let you go, okay? But first off, guys.
I'm not in a hurry. Yes. My wife kicked me out of the house. I'm in the barn. I'm good, man.
Dude, that's a nice looking barn, man.
No horses tonight.
Oh, man. So yes, guys, you can use a self-directed IRA. You can use a 1031 exchange to invest in minerals. You can use a Wyoming LLC. I saw that one in there as well. This is not a general partnership or limited partnership. You are the direct, you're buying, it's a purchase sale agreement, right? And I think, unfortunately, a lot of these people here, they're investing into limited partnerships or general partner where they're not an owner, right? And they're too used to someone else taking control where, no, you're the owner. And that's why it's tangible.
I think this is important. If you look at all the investments going wrong over the last 12 to 30 months, it's because of partnerships, company agreements, operating agreements, where they set the rules of the game up where you have no rights, you have no communication, and one person who you hope's honest is running the show. In our case, like Derek said, you sign a purchase sale agreement. If we have a $10 million portfolio with 1,000 acres, when you get your exhibit for your purchase sale, it's going to say, hey, I put in $100,000 out of that 10 million. I own a piece of every single deed track. The deeds are uploaded to your account on the app. You get an exhibit that shows what you own, and it's tied back to the filed, deeded, recorded documents. They're yours. You own it. It's like owning your house or your building, or it's your piece of real estate. We do that because at the end of the day, partnerships cost money, K1s cost money, and I want to be able to come and go when I want. I mean, I like your party, but when I want to leave, I want to leave. They're your assets.
Man. Troy, last question then, just because, man, there's so many of them. We could go through this all night, but what are the major risks involved? Like, for some reason, I guess we haven't talked about the risk involved in there. And, you know, it's funny. I wonder if it's because I don't look at it as being risky. If I was investing in working interest, right, where you're trying to hope you don't hit a dry hole, I feel like that can be risky. You can make a lot of profit in it. But mineral rights, I guess I don't consider it risky. So what is your take on that?
Well, I always tell everybody there's three risks. I say there's three risks, and I do this jokingly. There's three risks. The first risk is that I'm Leo DiCaprio, the actor in the movie Catch Me If You Can. I'm a fraud. Everything's a fake. I don't exist. There's no minerals. It's a Ponzi scheme. But the track record of being around since 1985, fingerprints are on file with the FBI. I had my own brokerage firm for 20-something years. You can look me up online. There's not any photographs in Vegas. There's not any hidden bodies buried. So first one is he real? About as real as he gets. I'm about the most blunt individual you're ever going to find. Number two, that I am such an incompetent idiot that I don't know how to buy minerals in the right place. So I don't know how to buy, right? So the second risk is I'm completely incompetent. What's the third risk? That's the outlier. The outlier is what? Tomorrow, some mad scientist in Houston comes up with a pill, drops it in a glass of water, goes, that thing became hydrogen. It's a new energy source. Now, every one of you, for the most part, are paranoid. Okay, I trust me, I deal with millionaires every day. We're all eccentric, right? You're paranoid. Is hydrogen going to work? What about this? What if they burn coal? What if they set grass on fire? What if we're all worried about this alternative energy? All that makes sense except for 75% of fossil fuels is made to use the plastic in my mouse in the tree. There's no substitute for the material components from the refining process that are extracted in the synthetics that we use from a barrel of oil. So at the end of the day, can somebody find a replacement energy for transportation? Yeah, we got electric cars. Yeah, we have wind. I can see the day where you have solar panels on top of your hood and a windmill on your trunk. Now we got a true fossil fuel, wind, solar energy, dynamic alternative energy car. Not going to happen. That's the three risks.
Boy, there's so much going on in this.
Well,
chat.
I still see 118 people on the line. Keep asking questions. You know, like I've been kicked out of the house. I got some talking to get back in the house.
After we start investing in mineral rights, how do we acquire more mineral rights using the ones we already have so they grow and increase steadily over time? So I like this question. Actually, it's from Wendy. I think it's pretty genuine from that standpoint. So how is it if I invest with you, how can I get more minerals after that?
I would say probably 70% of our partners. So we started with 120 partners 4.5 years ago, and we now have 1,650 partners. I mean, we've done $650 million worth of acquisitions. But what happened is those investors that started back in 2019 and 20, as their minerals started cash flowing, they would take income from their jobs, occupation, business, and they would buy more minerals in, let's say, 2020. They take the income coming off the first minerals they bought and add to it. And so some of these investors start off with 2, 3, 5 acres, 10 acres, 15 acres, 20 acres. Now they're up to 150, 200 acres, and they own interest in 5,000 wells. So the idea is, and this is the hard part for investors. Remember, I've been doing this since I was 20 years old. The hard part for investors is oil and gas is not gambling. It is not a fly-by-night investment. If you really want to be balanced and you really want to approach energy in the correct way, first, you have to convince yourself, I need to own energy direct, right? And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to make it as one of my cornerstones of my entire portfolio net worth, and I'm always going to be in the market. Why is that? Oil prices drop next week to $40 a barrel. I'm going to buy twice as much because I have 100% consumption, right? Oil prices go to $140 a barrel. I'm not going to buy as much because the sellers are enamored with the high price, which is why real estate's in bad shape, right? So this is about, I'm always looking to Eckard or the company I invest with to say, you have a tight buy box, very strict parameters on economics, outcome, operators. As long as I know Eckard's buying it, taking all the risk, and I'm just joining Troy and his company and what they're buying, then I know if it's good enough for Troy, it's good enough for me. So back to Wendy's question. Have a plan. All right, I've got $5 million portfolio. I got $300,000 I want to set aside in minerals. Troy, Eckard team, wealth manager Derek, put me across 8 or 9 portfolios. In about 180 days, 6 months, I started getting my checks. I started getting comfortable. I like what's going on. Now I want to start taking $25,000 at a time, and I want to just continue to build. Clients did that 4.5 years ago. Some of these clients, I mean, I got so many clients telling me, "Troy, I'm retired because of you. I don't use any of my retirement. I don't use my Social Security. I don't use my retirement because why? I'm getting so much money every month from your wells. I don't ever have to touch my original principal." That has been the most satisfying thing in my career, is watching these clients tell me how our minerals are generating income. They don't have to touch their other assets, how unique it's worked. It's been just a gratifying event for me. Super happy about it.
Yeah, I remember my dad when he did his first when my dad was like, "Hey, let's put money with Troy," and he wanted to put $1 million in one of your packages, and he said, "Hey, hold up for a minute. Instead, we're going to split that into 3 or 4 different ones."
Right.
And you didn't even let him put $1 million with you right off the bat because he wanted to make sure he was taken care of. So, and
Yep.
that's not just that's your whole team. In addition, you typically host event once a year where you bring in all of your investing partners. And the only reason I'm bringing this up, Troy, is in the oil and gas industry. Unfortunately, there is a lot of Ponzi schemes, scam artists, these type of things, right? And you can see it everywhere. So
Well,
I think one of the best ways you combat it is you put all your investors into the same room and say, "Hey, if I'm not doing what I say I'm doing, you can kick my butt."
Well, I like to treat people the way I like to be treated, which is, if you don't have anything to hide, why don't I get in the room with all your other partners, and we can talk and share the stories. And Troy told me this, Troy told me that. And so for 26 years, I've hosted Eckard's private partner conference every year. And I said, I'm going to put 200 of you in the room. If I'm lying after 3 days of you being in the room with all my other investors, you're going to hang me like a piñata and beat the snot out of me on Sunday afternoon. If I tell the truth and you know that I'm who I am and what I am, and I do what I say I'm going to do, you'll be my partner for life. Most of my partners over the last 20 years, unfortunately, have passed away. This is true. Yesterday, I got a call from the son of one of my partners that was with me for 25 years. He passed away last year at 92. His son calls, says, "Hey, I want to be in your next minerals and I want to be in your pipeline venture." I go, "Okay. Can I ask how old you are?" He goes, "Yeah, I'll be 72 next year." I go, "Maybe I should talk to your son." I'm just saying, I'm now with the second and third generation partners, because for me, it's not worth lying. It's not worth stretching the truth. It's not worth having to have a memory. It's a lot better to say, "Look, you're my partner. I should be able to tell you anything, and you either decide you want to be with me or not. And if you don't, I'm okay with that. But if you are, I can tell you this, there's not a more ferocious manager of money than I am. I don't care if it's Exxon or Chevron. If you owe me money and you have minerals, or you're not giving me what I think is fair value, I don't care who you are. I'm coming after that money because it belongs to my partners." That's just the way I've run my life for 40 years.
You also give out nice clothing too. If you guys are wondering why I'm wearing that, like, all of your partners get like actually nice stuff. So I don't know. It's comfy. It feels good, especially since it's a little chilly here. So Troy, honestly, thank you so much for joining this webinar, taking the time out of your busy, busy day, right? Your barn looks gorgeous. It really does.
Well, this is a great event. This is all my grandkids. I'm having my 9th grandkid this year. So I spent all day Sunday wrapping. My wife was doing the ribbons. I'm doing the wrapping. And she's like, "This is a lot of fun." I go, "Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We have too many grandkids." I said, "We got to slow that down a little bit." But yeah, I can tell. I want to just share with everybody before we get going. That is, look, folks, oil and gas is a very, very dangerous industry. I'm telling you, 9.5, if not 9.9 of the people offering you investments in oil and gas are skinning you alive. It's sad, but it's true. Why? You have nothing to compare it to. You don't have any way of saying, if I'm going to drill this well, what does it really cost? If I'm going to buy this mineral, is it really in the right spot? Is it overpriced? You have no way of doing it. And most of these individuals have only been around 3, 4, 5, 6 years, right? Most of the people I've known in oil and gas over the last 30 years are dead, suicide, or in jail. And that's a harsh statement, because you go, "Well, how do I know I can trust you?" You don't. You have to work your way through it. But I'm probably the only guy in the business that's been here for 37 years. My 800 number was set up in 1991. My 800 number is older than most people who run the companies trying to sell you investments. That's how long I've been around. And it's unfortunate because it's such a great investment asset class, Derek. It has so much opportunity, but it's so full of thieves and crooks and liars. That's why these kind of webinars, that's why coming to our conferences, coming to our field trip, our education on Eckard Insights, it was all done for one reason. How do I demonstrate there is a company that does it right with full transparency? And it's easy to tell the other people, have a nice day, take a hike. You're nowhere close to what I need to be comfortable investing in energy. That's the difference.
Yeah. You've been very gracious to my family and stuff, so I do appreciate it.
You betcha.
Well, thank you, Troy. I appreciate you jumping on. Guys, this is your last chance right now. Text the number that you see there in the chat box. Use that link below. I see Don is jumping back on. I know Don's going to talk a little bit about his 3-day summit coming up right in January. I also put that link right down there. Is that right, Don?
No, I was just going to compliment you on an excellent presentation. Troy, you made it very, very clear. I very much appreciate it.
You're welcome. If I can ever help in any way, you let me know.
And students, if you'd like a consultation, Troy, put that up one more time.
Yes, sir. I'll do it right now. And it's here. No, it's here. And I'll do that. And then I'm going to backtrack it to, hang on. You know, I'm a rookie at this. There you go. How's that?
Oh, look at that handsome son of a gun.
Yeah, man. America's Most Wanted right there on the right-hand column.
I think it's the same picture you have on your website too, Don.
Well, so there's an email, there's a phone number, there's a website. We can't make it easier for you.
Well, I appreciate you, Don, having me on board. I'd like to recommend to all of your students to continue to work with Don, follow his advice, look at all the expert professionals that he has. If I could go back 37 years, I would have made a lot more money and lost a lot less money had I joined Don and his company and has subscribed and listened to experts, because there's a lot of people out there giving advice who really can't tie their shoes. And so you need to have somebody like Don and his organization to give you that information. As you take it in, you can decipher what works for you and what doesn't. But there's nobody going to protect your money except for you. And that comes through education, information, and collaborating with other like-minded, smart investors. You have to do it. And Don offers a great program. And quite frankly, every one of you need to just continue to support that and be part of it.
Troy, thank you very much. And every investment involves risks. You know that whole thing.
Yep.
And make sure that this is right for you. But start with the consultation and see. And Derek, Troy are not going to twist your arm into this. This is not going to be a sales pitch. If anything, if it's not right for you, they'll tell you very bluntly that they don't think it's Derek, is that about right?
That is true. That's not only so true. I actually saw an email today where someone, they just truly didn't understand the investment. And I will never forget, Troy, you actually responded in the email. You said, hey, you know what? This investment's probably not the best option for you. Maybe you should check out XYZ. And I thought you were very forward, because, you know, you're not there just to take someone's money. Like, that's not the case. If it doesn't fit you, and it's not going to fit everybody.
Yeah.
I look at it this way. With oil and gas, you're either a investor and you own it like we do, or you're a customer. I'm not mad. Some people need to be investors in oil and gas. Somebody else needs to fill their car up with the oil and gas that we produce. So either way, I win. So I just want you to know, invest or don't invest, just thank you for being a customer. Thank you for being a partner. I thank everybody on the screen. It's great.
Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone. Have a great holiday season. I love the Christmas tree in the background. I need one of those as well. Your great holiday season, and we will see you at the beginning of the year next year. Thank you, all of you, for being here. Troy, Derek, appreciate your time.
You guys take care. Merry Christmas, everybody. Take care.
Take care. Good night.